Hi, and thanks for stopping by. I'm genuinely glad you're here watching this video, and if you choose to subscribe to the channel, I'd be sincerely thankful. It really helps a lot. Let's get right into the story. I'm Raphael. For close to 10 years, I believed I was living the life I'd always wanted. Married to someone I loved, building a future together. Quinn and I crossed paths during college, and not long after we earned our degrees, we decided to get married. We quickly settled into what I thought was a steady, fulfilling partnership. We both landed solid jobs, moved into a cozy home in the suburbs, and began crafting a life that looked full of potential. I worked with a respected real estate agency, while Quinn was an accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown. The early years passed without much friction. Quinn would often send me lighthearted texts, memes, thoughtful notes about things I'd mentioned in passing. She seemed fully invested in keeping our bond strong, and she had a way of making me feel seen and appreciated. We had the usual disagreements any couple might face, but nothing that raised serious concern. One thing that did come up from time to time was her tendency to suddenly pull away emotionally. Every so often, she'd become distant for a few days, avoiding conversation without much explanation. When I asked what was wrong, she'd usually say she was just overwhelmed at work or feeling drained. I always tried to help her decompress, taking her out for a nice meal or planning a relaxing weekend away. Most of the time, it seemed to do the trick, and things would return to normal. What makes betrayal so painful is that it often hides in plain sight, especially when you've given someone your complete trust. In hindsight, maybe there were warning signs, but I wasn't looking for them. When you're convinced your partner is just as committed as you are, suspicion doesn't come naturally. Quinn's job occasionally required her to stay late, particularly during audit season. She'd come home exhausted, venting about difficult clients or last-minute deadlines. I always tried to be supportive. When she began working extended hours more often, I assumed it was just another busy stretch. Her texts started coming later in the evening, and she began arriving home close to midnight, apologizing each time with a different reason. Despite that, she remained loving. She continued to make weekend plans with me, reminded me often that she loved me, and showed no signs that anything was wrong. My own work schedule varied, too. Sometimes I stayed late to meet with clients or wrap up paperwork. But there were days when I had the freedom to head home early if things quieted down. One Thursday in March, a big meeting I'd been preparing for got unexpectedly rescheduled. With my afternoon suddenly free, I wrapped up a few loose ends and decided to leave the office early. I gave Quinn a call to let her know I'd be home ahead of schedule. Her voice on the other end sounded surprised, almost like I'd caught her off guard. I asked the usual, how her day was going. She said it was hectic and that she probably wouldn't be home until around 9 or 10. I offered to pick up dinner to save her the trouble of cooking. She thanked me, but her voice sounded distant, distracted. She quickly mentioned she was on deadline and had to get back to work before hanging up. The call left me uneasy. There was something in her tone that didn't sit right. Still, I tried to ignore the feeling. After getting home, I took a shower, checked my emails, and started thinking of ways to make her night a little better. There was a bakery near her office that made cinnamon rolls she adored. I figured I'd surprise her with one, along with a coffee she liked. Maybe it would brighten her evening. I picked up the order and made my way downtown to her building. I'd dropped by her office before for lunch, so I knew the receptionist. She usually greeted me warmly and would let Quinn know I was there. But this time, her reaction was different. She looked surprised to see me. I told her I was just bringing Quinn some coffee and a snack since she was working late. The receptionist hesitated, then looked puzzled. She told me Quinn had left several hours earlier, saying she wasn't feeling well and needed to go home due to cramps. I stood there, stunned, holding the pastry bag in my hand. I asked if she was sure. She nodded, said Quinn had looked pale and had said she needed to lie down. I stepped outside, my mind spinning. Quinn had told me she'd be at the office until late, but clearly she'd left hours ago. If she was sick, why hadn't she said anything to me? Why lie? I got into my car and sat there in silence, trying to process what I'd just heard. Then I decided to call her, just to hear what she'd say. I kept my tone light and asked about a chicken dish she'd made recently. Told her I wanted to try making it for dinner. It wasn't a great cover, but I needed to gauge her response. She hesitated, then asked which recipe I was talking about. I mentioned the one from that food blog she liked, the one with the herbs. She said she'd send me the link later, then added that she and Karen, her co-worker, were stuck in a conference room rushing to finish audit reports. Their boss was apparently breathing down their necks. Her answer was convincing. If I didn't already know she'd left work, I would have believed every word. I wished her good luck and ended the call, but as I sat there, I felt sick to my stomach. She had just lied to me, without hesitation, without stumbling. I considered heading home, but something told me not to. I remembered that a while back we had synced our phones with the Find My app. We mainly used it for convenience, like when one of us misplaced a phone around the house or at the gym. I'd never thought of using it for anything else. But in that moment, sitting in the parking lot, I needed clarity. I opened the app. At first it showed my own location. Then, after a second, Quinn's phone appeared. My stomach dropped. She wasn't at the office. She wasn't at home either. The app showed her phone at a hotel about 20 minutes away, an area unrelated to her job or any friends we shared. I stared at the screen, frozen. That small icon showing her location felt like a punch to the gut. There was no rational explanation for this. She had lied about working late, and now she was at a hotel. I could have called her right then, demanded an explanation, but I knew how that conversation would go. She'd spin it, shift the blame, make me second-guess myself. I needed something undeniable, evidence I couldn't explain away. So I drove there. It was a mid-range hotel, clean, modern, the kind business travelers use for short stays. The parking lot was half full. I slowly circled around, scanning the rows of vehicles. Then I saw it. Her car, parked in a far corner, away from the main entrance. I pulled into a nearby spot, turned off the engine, and reached for my phone. I took multiple photos of Quinn's vehicle, each one clearly displaying the license plate. Then I shot a brief video, careful to include not just the car and the plate, but also the unmistakable presence of the hotel looming behind it. While I documented the scene, my thoughts wandered. After nearly a decade of marriage, my wife was involved with someone I had never laid eyes on. She'd been deceiving me, telling me she was tied up at work, when in truth she was sharing a hotel bed with another man. The drive back felt like it would never end. My mind churned through all the nights she claimed she was stuck at the office, every so-called business trip, and each evening she came home looking drained. How long had this betrayal been happening? How many lies had I believed without question? When I eventually made it home, I tried to go through the motions. I changed clothes, threw together a sandwich, and sat down in front of the television. Quinn arrived around 9:30, earlier than she'd said, but still late enough to maintain her usual alibi. She came in looking every bit the overworked professional, makeup fading, clothes rumpled, and fatigue etched into her face. But I saw right through it. The disheveled appearance, the tired expression, the story she was likely rehearsing. None of it was genuine. She asked me the usual question. How was my day? On any other night, it would have been routine. But now, knowing where she had just been and who she had been with, it made my stomach turn. I kept my response short and didn't look at her. She lingered, clearly waiting for me to ask about her day. When I didn't, she dove into the story she'd already prepared. She spoke of the audit she'd been referencing for weeks, claiming it had turned into a disaster. She and a colleague had supposedly spent the day buried in paperwork while their boss hovered and demanded constant updates. Her story was convincing. It had names, specific frustrations, little flourishes that made it sound real. If I hadn't seen her car outside that hotel myself, I might have bought every word. But I said nothing. She kept trying to engage me, asking questions here and there, but I only gave brief nods. Eventually, she gave up and went upstairs to shower. When she returned, she found me sitting on the bed in the guest room. I was replaying her lies over and over in my head, stunned by how easily they came to her. Standing in the doorway in her pajamas, she looked confused. She asked why I was in the guest room. I didn't respond. She asked if she had done something wrong. The question nearly made me laugh. Had she done something wrong? She had shattered our marriage and still had the nerve to act like she didn't know why I was upset. But I wasn't ready to confront her. I simply told her I needed some space. She stood there for a moment, clearly trying to figure out what was going on. I doubted it ever crossed her mind that I knew the truth. Eventually, she murmured goodnight and returned to our bedroom, leaving me alone with my fury and shattered trust. Sleep was impossible. My thoughts cycled through every moment she must have lied to me. But more than anything, I kept turning over what I was going to do next. I could show her the evidence in the morning, demand the truth, ask her to end it. But something had shifted inside me. Maybe it was how smoothly she had kept up the act. Maybe it was the realization that the woman I had married no longer existed. Either way, I knew I wouldn't be confronting her. Not now. She had made her choice, and now it was my turn to make mine. The next morning, Quinn acted as though nothing had changed. She brewed coffee, asked what I had planned for the day, and casually mentioned that she might be home late again. She seemed bothered that I had slept in the guest room, but she didn't press the issue. I gave short replies. After she left, I called in sick to work and spent the rest of the day researching divorce attorneys. Divorce had never been something I seriously imagined for us. Even in our toughest seasons, I'd never truly considered ending it. But as I scrolled through profiles and firm websites, reading about infidelity and asset protection, it became clear that this was the only way forward. Eventually, I found an attorney who specialized in cases involving extramarital affairs. She had over 15 years of experience and emphasized helping clients through the emotional and legal wreckage. I called her office, gave a brief outline of the situation, and booked an appointment for later that day. She was direct, professional, and self-assured, a woman in her 40s whose confidence immediately put me at ease. I shared everything, the photos, the video, the lies. I told her I was ready to end the marriage. She confirmed that the evidence was solid and would strengthen the case. She asked whether Quinn had any idea I knew. I told her no. Quinn believed I was upset about something trivial. The attorney advised me to keep it that way. The less warning Quinn had, the less time she'd have to hide finances or manipulate the outcome. Over the next 2 weeks, I maintained the appearance of normalcy while quietly working with the attorney to finalize the paperwork. It was one of the most emotionally grueling stretches of my life. Quinn continued to come home late now and then, weaving more stories, and I continued to listen in silence. She became irritated by my coldness, accusing me of being distant or moody. I let her think what she wanted. By the 3rd week, the divorce petition was ready. It cited adultery and requested an equitable division of our property. My attorney asked if I was sure serving the papers would be the point of no return. I told her I was. We arranged for the documents to be delivered to Quinn at her job. The irony didn't escape me. She'd likely be sitting in her office, planning the next lie when she'd receive the end of our marriage in a manila envelope. That Thursday, just after 4 in the afternoon, Quinn was served. I knew the moment it happened. My phone lit up almost instantly. She called repeatedly, then sent a flurry of messages. Confusion, desperation, pleas to talk. I ignored all of it. She came home not long after, her face flushed, the documents in hand. She stormed inside and demanded to know what was going on. I was in the living room when she found me. I told her plainly that the papers were for divorce. She said she could see that, but wanted to know why. She insisted I couldn't just spring this on her without a conversation. I said that, in fact, I could. She sat across from me, still gripping the papers like she hoped they might vanish. She said she didn't understand. She admitted she'd noticed I was pulling away, but thought it was temporary. She asked if I was really going to end things over something so small. I looked at her and saw a stranger, Someone who had lied to my face again and again, making me feel guilty for withdrawing while she steadily tore our marriage apart. I told her, quietly, that I had seen the car outside the hotel. And just like that, her entire expression changed. The uncertainty dissolved, replaced by something much closer to outright dread. She asked me the name of the hotel, but her voice was different now. The curiosity had vanished. What remained was unsteady, frightened. I didn't answer with words. Instead, I placed my phone in her hands and let the evidence carry the weight. Photos I'd taken 3 weeks earlier told the story. There it was, her car parked outside the hotel. The location tracker confirmed the address beyond any doubt. She stared at the screen and I could see the fear consume her. She started to claim she had an explanation. I cut her off, saying no excuse could change what I already knew. I reminded her of the afternoon I'd gone to her office, only to be told she had gone home early, supposedly sick. What followed was nearly an hour of deflection. She tried to minimize it, called it a lapse, a meaningless mistake. Then she turned it back on me, accusing me of being distant, inattentive, leaving her isolated. She pleaded. Promised it would never happen again, asked for another chance. But I had no patience left for stories, for apologies, or for another version of the truth. I was finished. She cried and begged, saying everything a desperate person says when they realize something is broken beyond repair. But the person across from me wasn't the woman I thought I had married. Maybe she never had been. The divorce stretched on for months. Quinn tried every maneuver to delay or manipulate the outcome. My lawyer was prepared for all of it. The proof of her affair was undeniable, and it strengthened my position at every turn. Her affair had been with a man I vaguely recognized, someone from the commercial real estate world. I didn't know how they had first connected or how long it had lasted. And the truth was, I didn't care. The real wound wasn't the paperwork, the split assets, or even the betrayal itself. It was the slow, crushing realization that I had been sharing my life with a stranger. That the trust, love, and partnership I had believed in had never existed. But in that realization, I found a kind of strength. I never shouted at her. I never lost my temper. I never revealed my knowledge until I was ready. That restraint gave me control. For 3 weeks, she lived on edge, sensing something was wrong, but unable to name it. That silence spoke louder than any confrontation ever could. When the divorce was finalized, sadness washed over me. But so did relief. I was free at last. Free from deception, from the performance, from the woman who smiled at me daily while concealing everything. A year has passed since then, and life has grown lighter. I've learned that betrayal doesn't require arguments, begging, or desperate attempts to mend what's already shattered. The strongest response is quiet self-preservation, deliberate action, and letting your decisions reveal the truth. In the end, silence expressed everything that needed to be said. And that's where this story closes. Thank you for reading. If my story resonated with you, feel free to explore more on the channel. Until next time.